All right.
So I had, obviously, with a little bit of research, I can't help myself, and they say whatever you are, this is another insight to the accident, but whatever you are before an accident, my mom didn't tell me this until I was about 30. If they didn't tell me, that wouldn't be information. Whatever you are before an accident like that, whatever you are before, you're that afterwards, but exaggerated. So I was always kind of a fun, energetic, always going kind of guy, so you imagine now I'm going, woo, and it's just because it does something in the brain, it kind of emphasizes whatever it was. So where I was always compelled to get more information and find things and study or whatever, not necessarily in school, I did my own stuff. I didn't enjoy the school side of things. If I could get something I was interested in, I would study the heck out of it. And so anyway, Lamont started a bank, then made enough millions of dollars with that, decided to start a brewery called Ambiv, and then started a company that decided to merge with Interbrew and merge those two called InBev. And they were on a mission to essentially what their tactic was to go in and cut costs, right? So there you are with a company now that is about the same size as Anheuser-Busch. Anheuser-Busch a little bit better, but in an economy where the euro was up and the dollar was down, the value of InBev might be higher, and they could then go ahead with their takeover. I mean, it wasn't polite. It didn't come off so mean, I think, in public, but from what I understand, it was fairly aggressive. And they just, this is going to happen. It's just what's it going to cost. And I remember they came in, I believe it was $70, and they said, "We're never going to do that. You won't do this." And they said $75. And I go, "Okay." That was it. Maybe Corona was kind of in the mix back then. We had gone through, and supposedly there was some introspect about, I won't say who or what, but it was some high up guys, and you know the famous last name, something you said. Block, still not the chief, but still on the board, said, "Hey, I don't want to buy Coma. I'm the one who built this," and nobody else will be known for that. And by the Corona brand that might help make this, there's some kind of eccentric perspective that he wouldn't allow that to happen so that no one else could be ever known. And dethroning the king, I think they talk about something like that in the book, written about it. And so that didn't happen, and we didn't buy Corona, and then we went bigger than what Interbrew could come in and take, and it was over after that. And now they bought Corona. A few years later, right? After the whole takeover was over. So I was then laid off at that point, because they took our technical department, which was about, I guess it was about 2,800 people, supported 60,000 around the world, and it cut it in half in one day. And I was pretty much prepared. I mentioned I went to college and went to grad school, but essentially they just said, not necessarily because I had a master's degree, but because I made a fairly decent amount of money, because Anheuser-Busch respected that. They put me up with a pay scale where InBev said, "We don't care if you got a GED. It's all about salary, and all you people over this level and above are gone, except for a couple of key people that we absolutely know we can kind of keep around." And I know a couple of them, you know, what they were getting paid, and so you see all the politics going on there. But and then everybody else is gone. And those people that had done things, I was like, I don't know who's going to do restores. They don't know how to do them. There's nobody that's ever asked me to teach anybody else around here how to do it. I start with one person, and they leave, and I tell another person. So I don't know what Anheuser-Busch does to this day, and maybe InBev doesn't care because it's a different strategy. But we're not a brewing company, or we're not an email or a technology company. We're a brewing company. So we're not going to put all this, whereas the strategy with Anheuser-Busch, but historically they've been, let's do top quality stuff, and we're going to make the best of whatever it is that we have. Different management style, and it seems so far to be profitable for InBev. Their stock goes up, but they're losing market share, but becoming more profitable because they're cutting costs. So where does that play? So why did that takeover happen? Right? Well, then I went off and did my own thing, saying I'm going to go into technical sales, and then I went in and did that. They gave me a job as a sales guy, and I took a big pay cut to do that, with base salary, and I could get commission on top of it. And I said, "You don't have a real sales background, but we think you know this technology stuff will give you a shot." We became one of the top guys in the country, in the world. What was Google's largest sales partner team, and began to feel that I could probably do that better on my own because I had such a technical background. I saw they did a good job, but there was always something better, so competitive, and I don't necessarily, money was not the major motivator to be the best and to do what's best for my clients. It really drives me. So I wanted to win. I wanted them to be successful. And therefore, I would be too, but I didn't. That wasn't my focus. So went off, and by now I've started my own technical company. Now I help companies that want to find out how to get business off of this new technology called the Internet. Right? Outdoor invented it. Yeah. Or DARPA did in the mid-1960s. That's what my master's thesis was about, the Internet. So now I help businesses really understand the real way to get this done and how to hyper-track what's working, so you get a conversion rate that's 5 times what you would be getting for stuff that you don't know. If you don't know what's converting, you're just throwing money and stuff, which is what I want to do. They lose it and they think the Internet thing doesn't work. Well, it does. Google made $36.5 billion in 2011, and that's more money than ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox combined. So you want to tell me where the money's going. If you think you're big because you're on the ABC, NBC, or Fox, or CBS, well, you're not as big as Google. So, and Google can now go into the much smaller businesses and do their things. So that's what I do now. But to me, it was most telling in this last election. And this gets into now. Let's talk about political stuff. And again, it's not about. I really don't believe it. I just happen to be affiliated. I affiliate with a party who believes the same thing I do. So call a party whatever you want. Democrat, Republican, Libertarian. If you want, and Libertarian, they slide off. There's a number of Republicans kind of slide off into the Republican, to the Libertarian tent, just because they're hardcore that way. But some other things that don't necessarily work, and at this point, you might be wasting your vote because they argue, well, I'm making a point. The point is really changing anything because Ross Perot kind of helped us prove that, right? And Bill Clinton got elected for no other reason than Ross Perot took 20% of the vote away from George Bush. And who would ever know who Bill Clinton was and all these liberal policies that got implemented because of that. And so thank you very much, Ross Perot. But, for whatever reason, maybe God determined or whatever, we needed to learn a lesson there. So here we are. Think about where we're at with regard to, we've got a decision to be made, right? So we've got Clinton, we've got Bush, back in my political interest in really kind of going, the first time I was on my own to be able to be part of a political scene was to say that the Iraq, the Gulf War was happening. And people down at St. Louis University, where I was going, I decided to go away to school, so I went to St. Louis University. On campus, so that's the way. So I can still go home and get my laundry done. But they had protested this attack. Why are we invading? This is not right. Well, we were the protesters of the protesters. And they said, oh, and there were some hecklers behind those, and they covered us. And I took an American flag and put it out my window of my dorm up on the 12th floor to show my support for what guys who I believe are doing what's right, and who knows whatever really went on behind those scenes, especially years later when they were 17 phase. We didn't find whatever chemical or nuclear weapons, but I still spot there's something that happened that they can't tell us now, and we'll find out about years later. And it was the right move, even though people don't recognize that or even have the knowledge to know that right now. But put my American flag out, and it was one you had the 2 poles that went together and hung it out, and it would swing around. The wind at that height would wrap around the poles. So I took innovative. I said, I've got some fishing line here, right? And I'll just tie that to the flag and hold the flag. And now you can see that flag. That's what I want people to do. I want to see a wrap thing. But that effectively made it into a parachute. So it swung off, still attached to the fishing line, and then was hanging down around the 6th floor, beating on people's windows. And they said, what's going on? We're going back out with us. So I then had to become the OSHA guy at the time and talk about how that was unsafe. People could die, so I couldn't help myself to say. Buddy Dre, 6'3", 116 pounds, or whatever, tall, skinny guy. What would happen if Dre got hit in the head by this guy? He would die. It's horrible. I'm making fun of, but okay, safety concern. But think about the lives that we might be changing because we're getting a little more perspective on, hey, think about why this flag is here. I didn't argue. I said, okay, I'll take my punishment and get to speak. But went on. So then we've got Clinton after Bush at that point, pro-election, Clinton again, and a number of policies implemented with the Republican House and Senate. Clinton would sign them in. And so who was really behind it? That's when that great housing thing was going off. I want everybody to have a home, whether they should own one, they qualify to own one or not. And then a lot of people blame Bush for the housing debacle, but where was it really started? It doesn't. You don't have a housing crisis in 30 minutes. It takes years for these houses to not be valued what they originally thought they were, and they're going to recognize that things are increasing in value as much as they are. And they go, wait a minute, these are, and they put more mortgage equity programs. It's a big mess, but anyway, Bush 2, for the first term, contested election with Florida, and the Supreme Court coming in to say stop, and because they had 5 conservatives and 4 liberals, and then 9/11 happened. Right? I remember sitting there when it happened. I was on my way to work, and I listened to Cam Wex, and I'm like, I don't want to waste any of my time. If I get information from anything, I'm even being 26, 27 years old, I want to listen to as much information. I listened to talking about there's this attack going on. What's going on? I stopped my car, went back into the house, turned it on, and one plane had already hit one tower. And the second one, by then they had cameras pointed up to the tower that had been hit by it. And so I watched live as they fed this through because they had the camera on already. I didn't realize what was going to happen. And the second plane, I watched it come in and hit the second tower. Oh my gosh, this is where it's at. So then we're thrust into war, really. I mean, that's a major attack on war, something that had been going on for years and years and years, which nobody ever made much issue with, except for people who paid close attention. There have been bombing attempts for trade centers a number of times. Kind of get swept under the rug, and that's not exciting or negative, and perspective from the liberal press. And I argue the liberal press is liberal because their job is to tell you something exciting, whether it's true or false or in depth or not, to get your attention so I can sell advertising. Blame it on the capitalists because they're the ones doing it, right? But let's be honest, that's what Fox kind of expected to do over the last 15 years. Say, hey, the whole marketplace. So, you get now Bush is in office, and he's going in there and saying, hey, I'm going to be the fearless leader, and presidential approval really is going great, fixing this whole war thing, and the economy is taking a major hit. He got it going back again pretty strongly, but built on still some of the stuff that had been implemented in the previous presidency, and it finally came all crashing down. So it comes down on his term, so they say it's his fault. So then who's next up? Well, he's done, right? He's only run twice. I figured that out with having FDR in there for a third or fourth term, whatever, and some of the crazy stuff. And even FDR, I've done some research, talked about cannot continue to provide an influx of overbearing charity and related handouts because then you create a dependent population. And so he even said that. He was the most liberal giving people to do that. His solution to give all these people enough so that they don't die, I might happen to get a lot of votes by doing this, right? Kind of what it's happening. So, the great president took care of him, elected 4 times. Beginning of what I refer to as the tipping point. So, who we have running for office now? Well, Hillary Rodham Clinton's going to make this happen, right? Some young senator, he's got 2 years in public office on a national level out of Chicago, a senator that filled in for another guy who, I forget who it was, filled a spot for by the name of Barack Obama. And before that, he had great experience in changing the world as a leader, a community leader. Incredible experience with business somehow. Oh, wait, no. And so he's very well spoken, articulate, and smart to help really. I've studied quite a bit of his tactics and what he appeals to. And so he comes in and sweeps in, and people are going, he took out Hillary Clinton, right? To get the nomination and go against who the Republicans had put in place, and between Romney and McCain and a few other guys. And McCain did the nomination, kind of old boys network, to put his time in and put him up, and probably would have been a decent president, but didn't have the same charismatic nature. And boy, Bush had come in here and messed things up, right? Because it was his fault. He didn't realize it probably came well before that. So Republicans still very well uneducated in general about why things really happen, and that's why you get the vote you just saw, I think. So Barack Obama wins the election. And people just hope and change. Rick Brown was saying, I hope there's some change now. But got a lot of people riled up. And so I kind of slammed on what we kind of developed there. And in my master's thesis, I talk about how the internet is just going to absolutely change the way we do things. How many people would agree? We've seen just the way business is done is completely different than it was 15, 20 years ago. 10 years ago. And there's still companies I can tell you that have no clue how to do business on the internet, even though it may not be done on the internet, how you get people find you and keep your business right by doing so. But by now I think we've come into, and this is kind of the point I want to talk about, and it goes into the slide that I find is kind of appropriate. And I've only got 4 slides, so you've seen the first 2. Well, one nation under God, indivisible, right? This is my theme. Hopefully we can stay united. Maybe I guess 5 slides, but here's where we're really at. And so, democracy and Republicans. The title of the book is Democracy in America. But the quote is in this book, and I thought for a long time, there's got to be somebody who else has said that you can't keep giving stuff for free. I mean, we know it in business every day. You got to sell more than you're paying out, right? Whatever you're trying to cover. Ham's Deli is a great example because I know the guys that own this, and I knew back when they started this place. I knew those guys work. But a democracy cannot exist as a permanent form of government. It can only exist until the voters discover they can vote themselves to largesse. I'm not sure how to say that word, but I had to look it up, so I put in parentheses what that is interpreted. Google it, and there's the definition, but it's liberal giving. The exact definition, what I found, liberal giving as of money from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidates promising the most benefit from the public treasury, with the result that a democracy always collapses over loose fiscal policy, always followed by I'd say anarchy first and then a dictatorship. The average age of the world's greatest civilizations has been 200 years. That's from Alex de Tocqueville in the book. So, to me, that's essentially where I think we're at. And I attribute some of that, if not enough to make a difference, to the internet. And because now we have this great tool for disseminating information, and just like had historically been able to be done, we get that information out there, right? But it's then a matter of to what depth, to what extent do we really make sure people understand it? And so there's always going to be people and the liberal press, the liberal press by nature has 30 seconds to get something in front of you to get your attention, and then they don't go anything beyond, hey, this is the shocking thing that I had to show you so I can keep your eyes on the screen, and don't even bother to try to understand it. And that's why I argue that what side of the field are we on when you talk about talk radio? Well, what's the difference between the general quick flash media and talk radio? Well, talk radio, they don't have a 30-second splash. You got Rush Limbaugh, Glenn Beck, Bill O'Reilly, Greta Susteren, and these people who now have, she's more of a talk show, but she goes into more depth. And same with O'Reilly and some stuff they get done on the radio. But these guys now take a half hour, 2 hours, 3 hours to more in-depthly cover that topic and help you further really understand the implications of that flash that they just talked about that got your attention, but you're too busy, you have to cut the grass and pick up the kids and coach the baseball team, and I don't have time to understand it. So some of the most affluent people who really do well don't understand because they don't want to get beyond, oh, I want to help somebody. So I had a conversation, like I said, in kind of preparing for some of this, and I've had these thoughts for years. And so what to me it amounts to, we can go on for hours about this stuff, so you guys just tell me. But
2 minutes.
2 minutes, sorry.
2 minutes more.
2 minutes more. But what liberalism versus conservatism really amounts to is, are you informed, or are you led? Right? Are you the sheep, or are you the sheep herder? Are you going to be someone who knows what the issue is and how it really plays out, or are you going to just follow somebody that tells you what you need to do? And the people who tell the people what they need to do typically are the ones who just enjoy that kind of power. And there are certainly a number of people who need to be led. Right? They have no ambition, they've had whatever catastrophe, but I still espouse, going back to my accident when I talk about that, it would have been easy for me to be the victim. Right? I was in a coma. I was supposed to be dead. And for a short time after my accident, and and I think that's part of the recovery process. I felt horrible for myself, and I was aggravated, rotten. I can't believe, why did I have to be knocked into a coma? This is wrong. I didn't deserve this. And I realized after a short period of time, I'd say a year and a half, recovery, and then beginning to think about it, and then going, this sucks. Nobody cares. Not really. I mean, I get somebody's attention when I tell them about the story and I show them the pictures of this car with blood all over it. A friend died. But after that, I go, all right, I'm off with my life, and I can feel sorry for myself as long as I want to. And I espouse that many people who haven't been in a coma, many people who haven't had a particular difficult situation where their dog died, or whatever it may be, maybe it's something much more serious, still say, this world is too tough. I can't make it. Somebody take care of me. And they make that into a lifestyle. So then they espouse to have people in power that will facilitate that, right? Give me something. I can't do this on my own. And you're always going to have, they argue that you're always going to have the impoverished. You're always going to have the rich. And I would make the argument, you as a conscious, living and breathing, red-blooded person, not necessarily an American even anymore, right? You have people all over. Democracy has spread, and other countries. Talked to a guy the other day, who's going to be one of my sales reps, all the rest, I do some international business with countries all over the world, and the whole rest of the world is going away from socialism, getting away from dictatorship, control, government implementation and management. And the United States is going towards it. What's wrong with you people? Let's understand what's going on here. We're going down this path. So where does it lead, and how do you get out of it? And so I think for us, we now have to take the time out of our busy lives for our own long-term benefit, because we've reached the tipping point. Now the internet has changed the way we communicate and get that information out there. And it's easily accessible because people get their free internet from their free computer after they've had their free welfare and their free health care and their free food and their free housing.
Free cell phone.
And free cell phone, that's right. You heard about the gal who had 8 cell phones that she went and got for free and went and sold 7 of them because she's playing the system, right? And wherever you get that. So now you've got these handouts, and my dad has told me many times, is whatever you subsidize, whatever that is, you get more of, right? Because there's just enough people out there that don't realize the long-term effects of continuing to hand things out. We're ultimately run out of money. Business people understand it. People who aren't business, other than the business owners, everyone else works for the businessman. Some of them get it, some of them don't. They can be led by these wonderful people. And this is where I get into the core of what I espouse and talked about. My dad never poured it down my own throat, but I remember sending the emails. I said, this is what I've come to believe and understand. I got in this discussion with my buddy Jay, who's a Democrat, and he works for the union, and he's bought and paid for, right? Because you better support the people who are feeding you. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. And I said, well, then, from that perspective, don't bite the hand that feeds you by beating up and taking away from these evil business owners who happen to be the ones that are providing the millions and millions of jobs. And we want to continue to take money. So my point of the discussion about Anheuser-Busch, and I give you a little of my background, and like I said, I can go on for hours about this stuff. Don't let it cut me off. But feel free to cut me off. But Anheuser-Busch, great example. If you want to hit home right here in St. Louis, right? Why did InBev have the capacity to come in and do what they did and take away thousands of jobs? Some people say something, and it's at least thousands of people that were directly impacted that no longer had a job for Anheuser-Busch. But it was also many, many, many small companies that were right here next to the mothership, corporate offices that were based in St. Louis, that did a lot of the work directly for Anheuser-Busch, and now they're out of business because the big company came in and already had somebody that did that, and they did it out of Belgium or Brazil or wherever they were. Somebody tell me, why do you think they were able to do that? InBev. One big major contributing factor. What does it always come down to? Money, right? Okay, how did they have the resources to do that? We talked about one big impact was the fact that Euro was up, right? They're doing things right over there in Europe. So they started to do some things that appeared to be doing so. Now they're kind of coming down, right? We're headed in the same direction. So more handouts. 120 days off a year, or whatever we do in France. But they're paid. Work, you've got to contribute. The way it's designed on this planet anyway, the strong survive, right? The weak don't make it. We got to take care of as many people as we can, but you've got to contribute as much as you have the capacity for. More people taking in and handing out. So I had to look the stat out, and I had a stat I wanted to show my liberal attorney friend. Attorneys sometimes, I think, the perspective is they're smarter than everybody, which goes along with that liberal perspective. I'm smarter than everybody. You just do what I tell you to, and I'll make sure you survive. I'm not going to make sure you prosper, but I'll make sure I give you enough, effectively, to control you, and now make sure that you do what I tell you to and keep voting for me so that I have the power. My dad talks about it. The power that these people really want. And they go with the auspice of, I want to take care of you, I will help you, I'm going to do things for you. But ultimately, they're continuing to take away power. So I'll get into what happened recently. You can see some of the changes that were made immediately after the election. You know what I'm talking about. But InBev, tax rate, corporate tax rate, guess what it is? I want to guess? I looked it up. According to Wikipedia, some people say 33%. 33%. United States corporate tax rate. Now you have to. Each one of those European countries is essentially its own country slash, and that's for definition of a country. It is a state itself, right? Well, the United States, it's 50 different countries, if you will. They're independently managed, right, with governors, and have decided that we're going to all stick together under this flag, the United States of America. So we're all Americans, but we're all separate countries, if you will, managed to go by the overall governing power of the federal government. So where else do you get taxed besides the federal government? At 33%, right? You got to pay your state tax. Combined, our tax rates are around 52%, 53%. Okay, what state tax and combine that with federal tax? There's a little variation there. You get very specific about details of what discounts you get or whatever. But when you've got a 50, do the math. I mean, you've got a $5 billion company, and you're going to get taxed at 33%, or you're going to get taxed at 53%. When I can take 20% more of my income, of my overall revenue, and keep it, now I have the money to go around and start kicking the butt of the countries who are based in the United States, sweep them out, keep more profit for myself, because I get 20% more of $5 billion. It's a lot of money. It's $1 billion more profit that I have in my pocket now than the guy who just is in another country doing the exact same thing, as efficient as I am, but doesn't have to pay that extra 20% in penalty tax for doing something evil like creating thousands of jobs. To give people a place to live and a means to survive, right? So this evil dictatorship in capitalism is actually a word coined by Karl Marx to make us look like we're capitalizing on other people's weaknesses. That's what his approach, but it's term people haven't really taken it that way. I'm capitalizing on my ideas to make the world a better place, and if I happen to succeed with that and be prosperous, anyone want to guess the most charitably contributing country is? Now, how is a country with 320 million people, which is 5% of the global population, about 6 billion, right? 6 billion, 400,000, whatever it is. 5% of the population lives in the United States, but we're the most charitable. Where does all this charity come from? Government, right? None of it does. None of it does. It comes from the businesses and these owners who say, man, this country has allowed me to prosper. I want to give back at my own will. And maybe they get some incentive and a discount from the government to do that. But is that so evil? Because in that whole process, millions of jobs are served. Millions of people have an opportunity to work and earn a living. How awful is that, right? And it's done in an efficient way so that we can do things well, because they've got an incentive to do so because it's competitive. You've got competition coming in there. What kind of competition can you have with the government? It's the only entity. You're not allowed to compete. And I can understand there's some argument why you should have a government-run police so it can't become corrupted, as if there's an incentive somebody can pay off. Is our police corrupted? 98% of them, no, right? Everybody's heard the stories about the police officer that recently was a part of the drug busts that were always going on. He knew where the stockpile was and went in and took the drugs and started selling them. So, corruption, what are you talking about? We got to have, well, libertarians would go as far as to say you can have that controlled by the privately run people too. So I think there's somewhere in between you got to do that. But why is our military the best? Because it's run by the government, right? No, it's not. Our military is the best. We got some of the best training. Okay? That's key. And I think we do have some competition when it comes to military, right? Because we got the Russians out there. We better be better than them, right? We got the Taliban. We better. So there's competition to say, hey, you want to live, and you want to defend our country, you better have better resources to do so. But the real power behind, and this is where now we're doing less and less of the military that's in a manpower position, of humans out there as soldiers. We've got the best technology out there. Why do we have the best technology out there? Because we've got companies who can make profit all that evening. But now they've got an incentive to make that money. It makes us the most powerful, affluent country in the world with a small budget that we have, small population that we have, to really rule the world and make the world. It was always a better place. It was very upsetting to see Barack Obama go around apologizing to everybody, essentially to try and gain, and all it does is make us look weak and allow the young people to say, oh, they got a leader out here who thinks this stuff isn't really weird. How would you take these guys? You know, they don't even believe in it themselves. And it's very disappointing. So I think we're on a slippery slope. So we're at the tipping point. That's where this is, I think, the key. And so people say, oh, wow, where are we at? This is going to go crashing down. And so once you've got enough people that can vote themselves more free stuff, it's over. And that's essentially my thesis for what I'd say as a Republican and why I believe it all makes sense if you just say, look, we have got to stay focused on doing what's right. And so the last thing I'll really get into, and this is where who's the party that's known to care about people? Who's the party who just says, well, I vote for this particular party because they care about people. Democrats are known for that, right? And I said, look, Republican friends, we need to turn this around. They don't really care about people. I had my discussion with my liberal attorney friend, and I've got a good Republican attorney friend. He said, it might go down. I said, but he said, my liberal friend came down with the same argument my buddy made, who's a union guy. I care. What are you going to do? Let these people die? Still let them die? No. I'll let them get a job. They don't have to keep living off me. They can get off the butts. If I'm going to keep handing it to them, why do they need to get a job? They got free cable, free food, free housing, free transportation. Everything is free. What do I need to work for? That's horrible. You can't live have a culture that figures that out and can do that. Come crash it down. So it came down to, I said, I got to talk to Mike about this before I go speak to the group tonight, just to check what the very intelligent lawyer, right? This guy's well educated. He's a lawyer. And it came down, he says, I care about the people so much that I see that the Democrats are the only ones that really help them. Well, do they really help them? And he came to me and he said, they're the ones that care. And I said, Mike, you even thought this through. And I've got the last slide here. This is the whole conversation. I don't want to go through the whole thing. I looked at that after I put it on. Well, I'm not going to read all that. But what it amounts to is, at first, this is the funny part of this. I go, what? I said, Mike, explain to me how our economic system works. Because it is what powers everything else. I don't care what social program you want to pay for. It's not funded by anything else other than our economic system. Right? They can print a certain amount of money that devalues the rest of it and causes inflation, but that's not really where it comes from. It comes from these businesses who do this. So I say, where does our, I didn't say, where do we get our money from the government? I said, how does our economic system work? And his answer was, taxes. Are you kidding me? Taxes is the product that you guys begin to skim off the top. That's not how the economic system works. The economic system works because we've got a business who tries to make a product that's going to be better for the culture and the society that will benefit from this, and they can make a living off of it and provide something better, but they have incentive to do so because they can profit from it. And you just cut off the top of that, what you call taxes. Taxes is not the system. Are you kidding me? This is the perspective of liberals. And so they go, oh, I want to help people. Well, they're not really helping people. What are they really doing?
Killing them.
They're making themselves feel better because I gave this person enough to survive, not to ever prosper. As a matter of fact, I've dispowered them. It's not empowering to give somebody something, right? All you've helped them to do is now become more dependent on you. Feed a man, teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime. Give a man a fish, he's got to come back to you every day for that fish because he doesn't know how to give a fish to himself. In the Bible, right? Liberals interpret the Bible. Conservatives interpret the Bible their way. But I mean, that makes good sense, doesn't it? And so here we are. We've got a culture now that's learned they can, by checking a box on a ballot, give themselves more free stuff, which ultimately makes them more dependent, and they don't understand it. They just see free. Good for me. And it's all going to come crashing down. And so ultimately, what my friend says, I care about people, isn't about caring about people. Because if we really cared about people, we'd bother to say, I'm going to take a little extra time, a little extra effort, and if it even costs me a little bit more up front, I'm going to educate these people. I'm going to help them understand that they can do this on their own. And that's where I come from. My accident, hit by a drunk driver, told I wasn't going to be able to do everything I was capable of before. I said, no, I can still do this. And so, it's not about helping people from that perspective of giving somebody something. It's about, now I feel better about I just gave somebody something. So now it's about me again, because I gave them something, I feel better. And all it really does is make that person weaker and more dependent. And ultimately, there's some people the power to do so. And then what have they really done then? Ultimately, they're saying, hey, well, these people are kind of a pain in my butt, and they keep asking for stuff, so if I can give them something, they'll leave me alone. So again, it's not about helping somebody. It's about making yourself feel better, or making your life easier to say, just stay there in the trailer parks and ghettos, and take the little bit I give you so you'll leave me alone, and won't threaten me. And I can keep widening that gap to where I still make the money, and you guys just stay down here. And that's the problem we're at right now. So that's my version there. So that's... Any introspect? Like I said, I can go on forever. As I decided, that's where I'll cut. But comments or questions?
Karma Cowboy, how long have you? When time already was that we got? But how long have you been Cardinal Cowboy again?
Yeah, I mean, officially, we say since I started wearing a hat when my dad bought the hat. Stole it from him. Still says on here.
That was the old Augie Bush?
Yeah, the old Augie Bush hat.
Yep.
It says on here, KC Sports, $15.99. And that was back in about 1982.
Oh, yeah.
So that's when we say the Cardinal Cowboy was created. So the one was created. And then really got active. My dad, I have a picture where I show my dad had to put the hat on where it looked much nicer than and my senior prom, because he was a bit of a photographer, he's won a couple of awards, not professional photographer, a couple of contests here. But senior in high school, junior, I was a junior going to prom, put the hat on, so that was 1988. So now you know all that. But and ever since then, I had worn it part-time and stole it from my dad. I remember going into my dad's closet, I knew it was, and I reached up and took it. He took it back, and then ultimately I wasn't living at home at that point anymore, so I had it. He kind of gave up on it. But that's what this is all really about.
Did you go to all the games? Or?
I go to Major League Baseball interviewed me last year. I don't know if you heard, I was on a contest where they're trying to do a promotion. It was a promotion for Sprint. And they said, we want to go to each one of the major baseball cities. And I think there were 8 of them. St. Louis is included in that. It's really one of the best baseball cities in the world. Right? And they said, we're going to do a contest in St. Louis. And we want your 3 biggest fans that you guys tell us who they are. I didn't even know what was going on, but all of a sudden I got an email from a guy at MLB.com. He was a reporter, Lance, I forget his last name. He wrote all the articles for each game that happened, and it was published on MLB.com. You've been nominated to be in this contest as the best fans in baseball, and the contest for this month is going to be in St. Louis. So I said, is this a St. Louis contest, or is this a... They said, well, no, it's a national contest, and this week, this month, this week was in St. Louis. And I said, how many people? I said, well, we got 50 million members that can vote. I ended up winning it. So they came to my house, and I don't know how many of the 50 million actually voted, but I won the election. So. But when they came to my house, it was then up to me what I wanted to talk about. And I started quickly, and what this is all really about is getting that attention that it gains, and I don't really... Finally, somebody interviewed me for Channel 2 where they saw me and they got me on doing my thing at the Cardinal game, and I said, anything about me you want to know is on CardinalCowboy.com. They went out to and read my whole, which I hadn't written my whole accident history and everything down. And it ends up where the end of it's talking about the charities I work, fortunate to work with, and how really I try to help them, ask other people. Because you really feel like you're empowering somebody and helping. You really are if you donate your time to the charity. That's how you look out. How about giving them money for a few bucks and saying, take this. But give to the charities who do the things to get out there. And he read that, and that's when he came back to the interview. And Major League Baseball put on this, and they came and they talked to me, and I said, well, Cardinal Cowboy, and we got the that, and they do a Superman pose. I'm standing in front of my house like this, and I'm shooting up, and it's all out there on CardinalCowboy.com. It's really about how we can change the world, how we can make a difference, and don't worry about what people think about you. Think about that for a minute. I mean, and there's so many people that, I was in coma. I was supposed to be dead. The doctor said I was not going to make it. Do I really care what most people think that have a negative perspective on me wearing a baseball jersey, baseball pants, and baseball shoes or boots, the red cowboy hat? If you don't get it, man, I'm not going to explain it. If you want to know what it's about, go check it out. Either way, I got your attention, and maybe you'll take a minute to think about what it's really about, and then you can see my perspective, and hopefully you think this makes sense with what helps humanity most. Empowering people, giving them the opportunity to succeed and prosper. That's what it's all about. Does this answer your question? Anyone else?
Every time I thought of a question, you kind of answer.
Exactly. Thank you very much. That was awesome.
I can already think of other places you should come speak.
Okay. Well, that's what I enjoy, and that's what I want to do, and I do this kind of stuff, and all you guys are donating your time, right? And that's people that take the time to do that and want to really make a difference, and they care. And how many of us are millionaires? Don't answer that, but I mean, that's not what it's about, right? Because I know some very, very wealthy people, and I worked for some of them, and I know some. When I had to do some work for a very large corporate company that was known for brewing, you got a little insight sometimes with people that were working directly, and some of those very, very wealthy people are not really happy. It's kind of disappointing, but they got all the power and the money you could ever dream of, but they're not happy. If you want to be happy, go help somebody. Don't help them by handing them something. Give them something they can really benefit from and make a difference for themselves and for other people.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Appreciate you guys.